Jack Reynolds never imagined his retirement would lead to a battle over a boat. Yet here he was, standing in the driveway of his new suburban home, the gleaming hull of his custom-built Navy patrol boat gleaming under the morning sun, a stark contrast to the neat lawns and cookie-cutter houses surrounding him. After 20 years serving on the seas, Jack wanted a place where he could settle, find peace, and maybe tinker on his prized patrol boat. This wasn't just any vessel. It was a compact but powerful reminder of his years in the Navy. Outfitted with sleek lines, a reinforced hull, and a polished brass nameplate that read USS Sentinel. To Jack, it was a symbol of honor, discipline, and memories of protecting his country. But to Karen Matthews, the HOA president, it was an eyesore, a glaring violation of the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. Karen was known around the community as the self-appointed enforcer of the rules, a woman with an iron grip on the neighborhood's look and feel. She wielded the HOA's power like a weapon, and she had never been shy about targeting those who crossed her. It started the moment Jack pulled his truck into the driveway, towing USS Sentinel. A sharp-eyed neighbor, Mrs. Harper, spotted the boat first and immediately called Karen. Within hours, Jack found a note slipped under his door. Crisp and official. This letter serves as a formal notification that the presence of a Navy patrol boat on your property violates HOA covenants. Article 12, Section 3. Immediate removal is required, or fines will commence. Jack frowned, rereading the note. Fines? Removal? Was this some kind of joke? He thought back to the community meeting he'd attended just days before. The HOA board had emphasized community harmony and respect for neighborhood standards. But no one mentioned that standards meant no boats, especially Navy-style ones, allowed in driveways. Curious neighbors gathered, whispering and stealing glances at the towering boat. Some admired its craftsmanship. Others seemed uneasy. One woman murmured, "That thing looks like it belongs on a naval base, not Maplewood Lane." Jack felt a flicker of unease himself. He'd expected a few raised eyebrows, but never imagined his beloved patrol boat would trigger a full-blown neighborhood conflict. The next day, Karen came knocking, dressed in a crisp blazer with a clipboard in hand. She exuded authority and a no-nonsense attitude. "Mr. Reynolds," she began, voice sharp and clipped. "The boat is out of compliance. It's disruptive to the neighborhood's uniform look. You must remove it immediately, or face escalating fines." Jack met her icy gaze, trying to keep calm. "Karen, this boat means a lot to me. I've checked the city regulations. There's no law against having it here. And I'm a veteran. Isn't there any leeway?" Karen's lips tightened. "HOA rules are clear. Your veteran status doesn't exempt you from community standards. You're either compliant or we start fines." The words hit Jack harder than he expected. He wasn't prepared for a war zone on his peaceful street. As Karen turned to leave, Jack caught a flash of something in her eyes. Something beyond just rule enforcement. Was it personal, resentment, or a deeper grudge? That night, Jack sat at his kitchen table, staring at the note and the faint echo of Karen's threats. Knew this wouldn't be simple. The boat was more than metal and paint. It was his pride, his history. And Karen, she was about to learn, Jack Reynolds wasn't the kind of neighbor who backs down easily. Outside, the USS Sentinel rested silently, its shadow stretching long across the driveway, a quiet promise of the storm to come. The next morning, Jack awoke to a chill he couldn't shake. Karen's cold stare from the day before replayed in his mind like a warning signal. But what unsettled him most was the crisp, official-looking envelope resting on his doorstep, stamped with the HOA's seal. It wasn't just another note. It was a formal letter. With a steady hand, Jack tore it open. "Dear Mr. Reynolds," the letter began. "This is a final notice regarding your violation of HOA regulations. The Navy patrol boat currently docked at your residence violates Article 12, Section 3 of the Covenants by its size, design, and presence on your property. You are hereby fined $500 per day beginning immediately. Failure to comply will result in further legal action, including lien placement on your property." Jack's heart pounded. $500 a day. This was no small skirmish. This was an outright battle. He scanned the fine print, looking for any loophole or error. Nothing. It was clear, precise, and merciless. Karen's handwriting, meticulous and cold, was unmistakable in the attached note. Compliance is not optional. The letter was more than a threat. It was a declaration of war. Jack knew he had to act fast, but questions swirled in his mind. Why was Karen so obsessed with this boat? Was it really just about neighborhood rules? Or was there something else beneath the surface? Neighbors started whispering, their curiosity bubbling into gossip. Mr. Ellis from next door muttered to his wife, "She's taken this too far. It's just a boat." Meanwhile, others sided with Karen, worried about setting a precedent for exceptions. Jack's phone buzzed with texts from some neighbors. Some supportive, others wary. Even his friend Mike, a fellow veteran, warned, "You're stepping into quicksand, Jack." HOAs can be brutal. Late that afternoon, Jack invited his closest neighbors for an informal meeting in his garage, where the boat rested like a silent sentinel. "Look, I didn't bring this boat here to cause trouble," Jack said. Voice calm but firm. "It's part of my life, my service, my history. I've checked the laws. No city ordinance bans it. The HOA's rules don't specifically mention boats like this." Mrs. Harper, clutching her knitting nervously, shook her head. "But Karen's got the board's support. They say it disrupts the neighborhood look. It's intimidating, some say." Jack nodded. "That's exactly the problem. It's not about rules. It's about control." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. As night fell, Jack sat alone in his living room, the letter pinned to the wall. The glow of the streetlights cast long shadows across the room. He couldn't shake the feeling that Karen's fight wasn't just about a boat. It was personal. That suspicion gnawed at him when an unexpected call came in. "Jack, this is Emily from the HOA board." A hesitant voice said, I think you need to know something about Karen. She's been difficult before. There are rumors about her pushing the rules too far, for reasons no one talks about." Jack's curiosity piqued. "What kind of reasons?" Emily hesitated. "I can't say much, but if you're going to fight her, be ready for more than just fines." The line went dead. Jack stared at his phone, a cold dread settling in. This wasn't just a dispute over neighborhood standards. There was something darker at play. A tangled web of power, grudges, and hidden agendas. He glanced out the window at USS Sentinel, its hull glinting under the moonlight. The boat wasn't just his pride anymore. It was a symbol in a war that was just beginning, and Karen Matthews was ready to bring everything she had. Jack sat at his cluttered kitchen table, stacks of HOA documents spread out before him, like an intricate puzzle. The harsh fluorescent light cast long shadows across the pages, but Jack's eyes were sharp and focused. He wasn't about to let Karen's threats or the looming fines bully him into surrender. The HOA covenants were dense and intimidating, filled with legal jargon and ambiguous clauses. Yet Jack was determined to uncover every detail that could protect his patrol, boat, and his peace of mind. He flipped to Article 12, Section 3. the exact clause Karen had cited in her letter. It forbade any vessel or watercraft of any kind to be parked, stored, or visible from any street or neighbouring property. The language was broad, but Jack knew there was more to it. Pulling out his laptop, Jack began researching city ordinances and veteran rights. That's when he stumbled upon a little-known law, a state statute, granting veterans certain exemptions from local ordinances when their property is related to military service or memorabilia. Could this be his lifeline? The hours ticked by as Jack's research deepened. His mind raced with possibilities. If he could prove his patrol boat was not just a vessel, but a symbol of his service, protected by law, then Karen's fines might be invalid. But this was just the legal side. Jack sensed something else under the surface. Karen's behaviour was unusually aggressive, almost obsessive. Friends he confided in shared hushed warnings. "She's not just enforcing rules," Mike said over dinner. "Karen's been known to have personal grudges. She holds on to slights, real or imagined. You might be the target of one." Jack frowned. He recalled a few strange comments from neighbours about Karen's past disputes. Was it possible that this entire crusade was personal? The next day, Jack decided to confront the HOA board directly. The monthly meeting was held in a small community centre, packed with residents, many eager to witness the showdown. Karen sat at the head of the table, her eyes icy, scanning the crowd with unmistakable control. Jack stood and addressed the room. "I've done my homework. This boat is a symbol of my service and is protected under state law. I'm more than willing to comply with reasonable community standards, but I won't pay unjust fines or remove something that honours my years in uniform." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Some nodded in support. Others whispered objections. Karen rose, her voice cold and unwavering. "Mr. Reynolds, this isn't personal. It's about the integrity of our community. We have rules to protect, property values and aesthetics. Exceptions can't be made just because someone served in the military." Jack's jaw tightened. "I respect the community, but your rules are vague and applied selectively, and your integrity seems more like a vendetta." The room fell silent, tension crackling like static. Suddenly, one board member, Emily, the same woman who'd warned Jack, stood up quietly. "I've seen Karen's tactics before. This might go beyond rules. We should consider mediation before this escalates into something worse." Karen shot Emily a venomous look, but said nothing. Jack left the meeting with mixed feelings. The HOA board was split, and the war lines had been drawn. Yet something else lingered in his mind. The nagging suspicion that Karen's motives went far deeper than neighbourhood rules. Back at home, Jack's phone buzzed again. This time an anonymous message. "Beware, Jack. Karen has friends who play dirty. Keep your guard up." The words sent a chill down his spine. Jack stared out at the USS Sentinel, its polished surface reflecting the setting sun. The boat was no longer just a symbol of pride. It was a fortress in a battlefield he was only beginning to understand, and the fight was far from over. The next neighbourhood meeting was unlike any Jack had ever seen. The small community centre buzzed with an uneasy energy as neighbours crammed into folding chairs, eyes darting between Jack and Karen, the two figures at the heart of the storm. Some residents whispered in tight groups, clutching coffee cups or folding their arms in frustration. The air felt charged. Everyone sensed this dispute was no longer just about a boat. It had become a battle for control, respect, and something deeper, more personal. Karen arrived late, as usual, her clipboard clutched tightly, her steely gaze scanning the room like a general preparing for war. She took her seat at the head of the table, visibly bristling as Jack entered, and calmly claimed a chair near the front. The HOA president called the meeting to order, but before any formalities could begin, voices erupted. "It's just a boat," shouted Mr. Ellis from down the aisle, his face flushed with frustration. "Why are we wasting time and money on this nonsense?" Karen's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Ellis, this isn't just about a boat. It's about maintaining the neighborhood standards we all agreed to. Without enforcement, the whole community suffers." A chorus of agreement and dissent erupted. Some neighbors cheered Jack, applauding his courage and service. Others voiced concerns about precedents and exceptions. Mrs. Harper whispered to a friend, "I heard Karen's been fighting a personal battle with Jack for months. This is about more than rules." Jack stood, voice steady but firm. "I've tried to reason with the board and Karen, but the fines keep coming. This is harassment disguised as rule enforcement." Karen shot back, her voice sharp. "Your Navy patrol boat is an eyesore, Mr. Reynolds, and a violation. If you truly cared about the community, you'd follow the rules like everyone else." The room grew tense, the crowd divided between loyalty to Karen's strict order and sympathy for Jack's stand. Suddenly, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered about Karen's past. A neighbor stepped forward hesitantly. "I think it's time we look at the whole picture," said Emily, the HOA board member who had once warned Jack. "Karen's been accused of overstepping her authority before. We need transparency and fairness." Karen's face hardened. "Accusations. Lies. This is an attack on the HOA's leadership." Emily met Karen's glare, unflinchingly. "If we don't address these issues, this community will tear itself apart." The tension was palpable. Jack glanced around, seeing faces twisted with frustration, worry, and a hint of fear. The dispute had exposed deeper fractures, old grudges, power struggles, and long-buried resentments. Later that evening, Jack received a cryptic voicemail on his phone. A disguised voice warned, "Be careful, Jack. Karen's not playing by the rules. If you want to keep your boat and your home, watch your back." Jack's heart raced. The conflict was no longer just about a boat. It had grown into a dangerous game of power and control, with unseen players lurking in the shadows. The next day, Jack noticed a strange car parked across the street. Unmarked, tinted windows, and a man watching the house intently. Was it a private investigator? Someone hired by Karen? Or something worse? Jack tightened his grip on the letter threatening fines. He knew now that winning this battle would require more than just legal knowledge and stubbornness. It would require courage, allies, and perhaps a willingness to expose secrets some wanted to keep buried. The quiet neighborhood of Maplewood Lane was no longer quiet, and the war over USS Sentinel had only just begun. Jack's mornings no longer began with peace, but with the relentless ring of his phone and the ever-present stack of letters and notices from the HOA's legal team. The $500 a day fines weren't just numbers anymore. They were a growing financial, a threat, a storm cloud hanging over his retirement. Determined not to be bullied, Jack hired a seasoned attorney, Maria Chen, known for her victories against powerful homeowners associations. Maria's office smelled of leather-bound law books and quiet confidence. She listened carefully as Jack explained the situation. "This isn't just a parking dispute," Maria said thoughtfully. "Karen and the HOA are overstepping. We'll challenge the fines and their enforcement power. There's also that veteran exemption statute. That could be our ace." Jack felt a flicker of hope. Within days, Maria filed a formal legal challenge, demanding the HOA cease all fines and enforcement actions against Jack. The HOA's response was swift and aggressive. Karen spearheaded a counterattack, accusing Jack of violating the community's core values and threatening to escalate the case in court. Meanwhile, whispers in the neighborhood intensified. Rumors circulated that Karen's leadership had exposed the HOA to serious legal risks. Board members quietly expressed doubts about her judgment, fearing the costly fallout. At a tense HOA board meeting, Karen was confronted. "You're risking the entire association's finances," one member said, voice tight with frustration. "If this goes to court and we lose, we could face huge liability." Karen's eyes flashed with defiance. "I'm protecting the neighborhood. If people don't respect the rules, chaos follows." But cracks were forming. Emily, the board member who had warned Jack, pushed harder for a settlement. "We need to consider mediation. This fight is tearing the community apart, and it's expensive." Karen's response was cold. "No settlement. We stand firm." Back in Jack's home office, Maria uncovered something startling in her deep dive through HOA records, a pattern of Karen's behavior that went beyond just Jack's case. There were previous complaints about her misuse of authority, excessive fines, and personal vendettas against residents who didn't conform. "This isn't just about a boat," Maria told Jack. "Karen's leadership could jeopardize the entire HOA's standing and finances. If we expose this, it could turn the tide." Jack nodded, realizing the battle was bigger than he imagined. But just as they prepared to file a countersuit, alleging harassment and abuse of power, Karen dropped a bombshell. During a court hearing, Karen revealed a surprising piece of evidence, a technicality in Jack's ownership documents. The boat, she claimed, was registered under a different name, potentially invalidating his right to display it on his property. The courtroom buzzed. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Jack's legal team scrambled to investigate. Jack's heart sank. This twist threatened everything, but Maria refused to back down. "This is a challenge, yes, but not the end. We'll dig deeper and respond. The truth is on our side." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. The small suburban dispute had exploded into a headline, grabbing legal battle between a Navy veteran and an unyielding HOA president. Jack looked at USS Sentinel, parked in his driveway, proud and defiant. The fight was fierce, the stakes higher than ever, and neither side was willing to give up. The courtroom drama was just the beginning. As Jack and Maria worked tirelessly to counter Karen's latest attack, a surprising ally emerged from an unlikely source. Mark Davenport, a grizzled retiree and former HOA board member who had quietly observed Karen's reign for years. Jack first met Mark at the local diner, a weathered man with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. "I've seen what Karen's done to this neighborhood," Mark said, stirring his coffee slowly. "You're not the first to get caught in her crosshairs." Mark's insight was invaluable. He revealed that Karen's obsession with control had been simmering for years, fueled by personal grudges and a fierce desire to dominate the HOA board. She's pushed neighbors out, fined families into submission, and even manipulated meeting votes. Jack listened intently. The pieces began to fall into place. The anonymous threats, the strange car across the street, Karen's refusal to settle. This was not just about a boat. It was about Karen's desperate grip on power. Meanwhile, Maria dug deeper into the ownership, documents Karen had challenged. With Mark's help, they uncovered a clerical error buried in the boat's registration paperwork, which invalidated Karen's claim. It was a small but crucial victory. But the battle took a darker turn. One evening, Jack found his garage door scratched with a menacing message. "Back off or else." The vandalism was subtle, yet chilling. He reported it to the police, but the investigation stalled. No suspects, no leads. The message was clear. Karen, or someone loyal to her, was willing to cross lines to win. At the next HOA meeting, tensions exploded. Karen accused Jack of vandalism, trying to turn the community against him. But Mark and several other residents spoke up, condemning the harassment and demanding an end to Karen's tactics. The community was fractured like never before. Friends turned cold. Neighbors whispered behind closed doors. And the once quiet streets felt like a powder keg as the legal battle loomed. Jack realized he needed more than just evidence and allies. He needed to expose Karen's motives publicly. With Mark's encouragement, Jack reached out to a local investigative journalist, Lisa Monroe, known for uncovering corruption in small towns. Lisa's articles had toppled politicians and revealed long-buried scandals. Lisa agreed to investigate the HOA, digging into Karen's history and the board's records. Her findings were explosive. Financial mismanagement, forged signatures, unofficial documents, and a pattern of punitive fines used to silence dissent. The story rocked the neighborhood. Some residents were shocked. Others felt vindicated. Karen's facade of control began to crack under the weight of public scrutiny. But Karen was not done. In a final desperate move, she threatened to sue Jack for defamation if he didn't remove his boat and drop the legal case. Jack stood firm. "I'm not backing down. This isn't just about a boat anymore. It's about justice." As the community watched, the battle lines were drawn tighter than ever. The USS Sentinel stood as a beacon of resistance in a neighborhood divided by fear, power, and secrets. And Jack knew one thing for certain. Karen's war was far from over, but neither was his. The air was thick with tension as the most anticipated HOA meeting in Maplewood Lane's history convened. Word had spread like wildfire. The legal battles, the vandalism, the journalistic exposé. Every resident was eager to witness these. Showdown between Jack Reynolds and Karen Matthews. The community center was packed. Supporters of Jack and Karen sat in opposing corners, eyes locked, whispers buzzing like static electricity. The atmosphere was charged. No one wanted to miss what could be the turning point. Karen arrived with her usual air of icy authority, clipboard in hand, scanning the crowd with a mix of defiance and something else. Desperation. Jack entered, quietly, confident but wary, his loyal allies like Mark and Maria flanking him. The meeting began with routine announcements, but the room quickly spiraled into chaos. When Jack requested to address the board, "I've fought for this country, and now I'm fighting for my home," Jack began, voice steady but resolute. "Karen's campaign against me has become a personal vendetta, fueled by lies, intimidation, and abuse of power. This boat is not just a vessel. It's a symbol of honor, history, and freedom." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But this fight isn't just about me. It's about fairness, transparency, and respect for every member of this community." Karen shot back, her voice sharp and cutting. "Mr. Reynolds, you refused to follow the rules that everyone agreed to when they moved here. Your actions have divided this neighborhood and threatened its very fabric." A tense silence followed. Then Mark stepped forward. "Karen has overstepped, time and again," he said firmly. "Her leadership has been marked by fear, not fairness. It's time for change." Whispers swelled into murmurs of agreement. Suddenly, Lisa Monroe, the investigative journalist, was invited to share her findings. She detailed Karen's history of financial mismanagement and the pattern of punitive fines used to silence residents. Gasps echoed around the room. Karen's face paled, but she fought back fiercely. These are baseless accusations, meant to distract from the real issue. Rule enforcement. Maria then presented the legal documents that had dismantled Karen's claims about the boat's registration. The room shifted again. Karen's arguments faltered under the weight of evidence. The tension reached its peak when a group of neighbors stood and voiced their support for Jack, demanding Karen step down for the good of the community. Karen's icy demeanor cracked. Her voice trembled as she tried to maintain control, but the room's mood had turned. Then, in a shocking twist, Karen announced her resignation, citing personal reasons and promising to cooperate with a new, more transparent HOA leadership. The announcement stunned everyone. Some cheered. Others were stunned silent. Jack felt a surge of relief, but knew the fight was not yet over. Legal battles still loomed, and trust had been shattered. As the meeting adjourned, Jack looked out at the neighborhood, a community fractured, but hopeful. The USS Sentinel remained steadfast in his driveway, a beacon of resilience and courage. The morning after Karen's dramatic resignation, Maplewood Lane woke to a different world. The storm that had torn the neighborhood apart had finally passed, leaving behind tentative hope and weary relief. Jack stood by the USS Sentinel, its polished hull gleaming under the sun. The boat wasn't just a vessel anymore. It was a symbol of perseverance and justice. The legal fines were dropped. The HOA promised new leadership, and the community had started healing. But just as Jack began to breathe easier, a new message arrived. An unmarked envelope slipped under his door. Inside was a single photo. Karen, late at night, meeting with a shadowy figure by the marina. A chilling note accompanied it. The fight isn't over. You've won the battle, but the war has only begun. Jack's heart pounded. Was Karen still pulling strings behind the scenes? Was the real danger still lurking in the shadows? He reached out to Maria and Mark immediately. Together, they decided to investigate discreetly. Days later, they uncovered a secret. Karen had been working with a powerful real estate developer, intent on buying up properties on Maplewood Lane to build luxury condos. A plan hidden from most residents. Her strict enforcement and fines had been part of a calculated campaign to pressure homeowners like Jack to sell or comply. The revelation shocked the community anew, but Jack and his allies were ready. Armed with evidence, they mobilized neighbors to rally against the development plan, petition local officials, and protect their neighborhood. The fight for Maplewood Lane had evolved from a personal dispute into a battle for the soul of their community. Months later, as new HOA leaders took office, fair, transparent, and committed to residents' rights, the USS Sentinel remained proudly docked in Jack's driveway, a reminder of resilience in the face of adversity. Jack, standing beside his boat, reflected on the journey. What started as a fight over a boat, he said quietly, turned into a fight for justice, community, and respect. The neighborhood, once fractured, was slowly mending, bound together by a shared victory. And though the shadows of the past lingered, Jack knew one thing for sure. The spirit of Maplewood Lane was stronger than any threat. As for Karen, she had vanished from the neighborhood, her true motives exposed, but her legacy a cautionary tale. Jack smiled softly and looked toward the horizon. The USS Sentinel was more than a patrol boat. It was a symbol that standing up for what's right can change everything.